You are about to learn today about behavior-driven development. The agenda for today, I will give a short introduction into BDD. It's not about to learn what's BDD, but it's about our contribution. That's why it's quite short. And then some words about Cucumber, which is the framework we are using to execute the specifications. And after that, I will show our contribution. And finally, you will see a demo. So BDD stands for behavior-driven development, also called specification-driven development, where the specifications are actually the final tests. It's compared often to test-driven development, where you write tests and you develop afterwards. It's agile software development, where collaboration between all involved parties, customers, architects, software developers, information developers, customers, I mentioned them. It plays a significant role, and all of them should collaborate to improve and validate and anything which is part of the development process. So specifications, also the tests, they are used to validate the implementation of the requested features. And they are meant to be improved constantly, as we mentioned, the collaboration. BDD is not meant to replace any components of your development process, but it should enhance that. It should also not replace your unit tests. Don't be afraid that you have to throw your unit tests already away. It's also low code and no code because you reuse steps implementations. And finally, as you can even use that to train end users because the library we provide is used to write UI tests. For execution of the specifications and validating the implementation, we will be using Cucumber. It's a project. It covers several languages, programming languages. And in CAP, we concentrate on JavaScript. And there, of course, the Cucumber.js implementation. The specification that you write, you will see in a minute how they look like. They are in a human readable format using Gherkin language in the form of given when then, where in the specification, each line it's called a step. So you know when I'm mentioning step, what does it mean? Each such line or step, it requires implementation in form of code. In that case, JavaScript code. Those step implementations, of course, they are reusable. And that's why that's exactly what we provide here. There is a new project called CDS Cucumber currently. It's part of the JavaScript community, the CAP.js community. So the first version of the library, it offers step implementations for Cucumber.js, of course, targeting sub-Fiori elements UI. There is also another implementation, or the one which offers OData implementations, and maybe we can cover later some other protocols like REST or maybe Subgraph. What the library offers, it manages your server, your CAP services, and your browser sessions. It means it starts and stops the CAP service as you go. You can navigate in the browser. Everything here is concerning the browser. You can navigate, the Fiori tiles. You can click buttons, links, and on table rows. Actions like all the actions from the CAP service, which are exposed in the UI, you can click on them. It offers also data extractions like reading outside the forms and the reports, the Fiori reports. And in addition, the checks which you use to validate, they are called currently here expectations. That's what you expect to happen. They are used to validate the displayed information in the browser. So that's basically meant to be really short. Everything is already documented. Later, so using the documentation, we can go directly to the demo. As I mentioned, it's for CAP applications. If you don't have already a CAP service for which we won't write tests, you can create a new one. Maybe you know them, the samples already from the CAP documentation. But that's what we are going to do here. I have locally a virtual machine where I already have a shell. And I have pasted the commands from the documentation in a notepad. So I already installed the CDS development kit. As a global, it's currently here. And so CDS command is also already available. So we create a CAP project like that, CDS init. We add the samples, SQLite, and we call it bookshop. You can choose any name here, of course. So you already have the subdirectory called bookshop. And here you have a full-blown CAP application service. We deploy in addition, because we use SQLite, we deploy the database. And here we come to what we provide. This is the library. Currently, it's still not released on NPM, so you should install it via a GitHub link. It's already visible. You can go even right now, and you can, in parallel, do the same what I do. So we install our module, which provide the Cucumber.js steps. It also has dependency to the Cucumber.js implementation. And after that, you also call a command, which is part of our repository, where you configure the library, which means it creates a Cucumber YAML file where you can in parallel open Visual Studio Code. So it creates a Cucumber configuration where it says we require our module, which we currently installed. That's how Cucumber.js finds the steps afterwards. And then it creates the directories, test features and step definitions. You place your feature files under test features. You can choose any other directory, but it's currently a standard. And in step definitions, in this repository, you can add your own step implementations if you want. It, in addition, configures two Cucumber plugins, which we can use later for completion integration in the Visual Studio Code. And it creates the first feature file, which is already documented here. But we know currently that we are doing that one. So the feature file, it looks like that. For each feature in your application, you'd create a new file called the feature name and .feature. And here you have to follow this template always. A feature file consists of several scenarios, and one scenario consists of already mentioned steps, and in the form of given, when, then. I can increase that so you can read it better. So we have the scenario name. You can add, of course, here comments, which are currently not that important, but you have the given, when, then steps, and they are executed as they follow here. If you have a list of given steps, list as when or then, you can combine them with and. These are synonyms, so it's technically, it's not that's difficult to understand it. And here you just list them and then you execute the tests. So I already installed the Cucumber plugin. There are, of course, I mentioned 2 of them. Later we can go through the documentation and read about the plugins. It is configured, as I mentioned, we use currently this one. You have to specify where your feature files are in your step implementations. So here, if it's configured, then you can directly go to the definition of each step and it opens the source code. Or you can press F12, as it said. Yeah, that's the integration. You cannot start, of course, the test from here. Currently, you can start them from the command line or using currently the Cucumber.js standard command. We use npx because Cucumber.js is not in the path. You can, of course, add in your operating system path environment also Cucumber.js where it's located, but it runs like that. And in addition, as a parameter, you specify directory or even single feature files, which you want to execute. So our feature files are always in the test directory. So we always do like this. Exactly. So we run already the tests. It will start the service. It listens on dynamically allocated port, of course. You can already see the OData requests that are coming. The dots are some artificial wait loops because the UI, of course, should be ready before we continue. And here you can see that it went quite well. We'll, of course, have a look at our scenario, what we have already implemented. So first of all, scenario, we open first Fiori page. It's a standard CAP feature. If you don't have already UI, you can use this one just to have a preview of Fiori application. So then we start the CAP application like CDS run, you know the command. Then we start the browser when we open the /URL where your homepage is located. You can of course specify any URL. Then we click in that page. We click the first Fiori preview page. I can show it later. And then in the UI, you search for Jane, and then you validate the exact results. That's what in the console here happens. It opened the catalog, and then it did a search for Jane, and that's all. Then it stopped the service, and it shows the result. So just to have impression what happens, we can show the browser. It's started in headless mode, so you don't see it in CI continuous integration environment. You cannot see, of course, the browser. The same npx. There are some environment variables which are also documented, like to control different paths in the framework. We can say show browser like one or true, and it will start the browser in non-headless mode. And then the browser will be, after the tests are done, the browser will be, of course, stopped so we can slow down. Like in seconds. Then we start and we wait. We remove the mouse because some features are working on mouse focus. And that's our UI. It already opened and it will search now for Jane. And that's all. And it will wait now 30 seconds. So you can for example, you can inspect, or maybe if you have some troubles, you can see the console here. You can see the sources which are loaded, and now you can see that UI5 will be loaded from the network, which can cause some performance problems sometimes. And maybe if we have time, I can mention there is already an implementation which offers local installation of UI5. So if you configure a local UI5, you can even test. You can perform your tests in offline mode, or you can gain significant performance improvement, save some traffic, and test different UI versions, UI5 versions currently. So next. We already saw the plugin UI5 version in advanced example. We have 2 minutes left, and maybe I can show, if you want to support me, of course, the repository is already available. You can at least open issues when you try that out. So I can shortly open that and maybe give a brief introduction of the structure, and maybe interesting for you. That's our repository, and here is the step implementations are in the lib steps. Most interesting are the tests that we use to develop and validate our own features. They are also located here. The test features, we cover bookshop and S-Flight. It covers most of the features, Fiori elements, which are in those 2 projects. Maybe you know the bookshop and S-Flight samples. So here are tons of examples. You can copy, paste, and replace. They are grouped, of course, by feature. S-Flight, some interesting examples. Final implementation, for example. These are too short, but they can become. You should keep your specifications as short as possible, of course, but it's not always possible. Where you have preparations for your setup scenario, it could become long, but that's basically. You can go through the examples. You can ping me later, and that's. Of course, you have code completion everywhere. That's in addition your new step at. And we expect, for example, table. Some cool features. If you misspell or you don't know the name of the table, this is for future implementation, but it's already implemented. Some places you just write anything and it will throw an error, and it will list the tables which are currently available, so you don't need to know. And a good idea is on some places, maybe you can write question mark, but if you misspell it with some kind of, did you mean implementation there? So it will help you. And when you don't know what's in your database, you just type anything, it will say, I found something else, and it will dump you can copy paste. So not be afraid to copy and paste, first of all. That's basically all. Maybe if you have some short questions, or maybe you can find it in the CAP community, CAP.js community. Yes?
I wonder, so what does the plugin itself give me? Does it give me all the implementation of these steps? So do I need to write any code behind these steps, or is that automatically provided?
It's automatically provided. The code is inside the repository we provide.
Okay.
That's the library we provide. Yeah. You have to write only your Gherkin specifications.
And I guess there's some documentation on what it actually can do, right?
Yeah, exactly. As I mentioned, it's fully documented already. So there are links everywhere. is documentation. It's a GitHub page. And here you have, of course, the examples. And you first on the top is called API documentation because these the list of the steps, some kind of API we offer. They are grouped like actions, draft steps for the draft, expectations, extractions. You can open its JS documentation, and it gives you some examples here. So we offer the implementation. If something is missing, as long as we cover Fiori elements, we can add it, of course.
Okay, I'll get you the microphone. Let's say we have one more question, because then I think we should go to the closing. Go ahead.
Okay, is it always UI related, or can I just perform the action and expect like classical or data?
We offer UI 5 Fiori elements steps implementation.
Mm-hmm.
We have already our data steps, and we can maybe offer them. We don't offer them, but we can implement your own steps.
Okay.
But the goal, as long as we cover CAP, we want to cover CAP, of course. Let's see how it develops, but we want to offer implementation for CAP features, first of all.
Can I run them in sub CI/CD service?
In what?
In the CI/CD service?
Yeah, sure. In the current test, they are running already. In the repository, they are. You can also see our workflows. So the test I showed, they are running already. They are be running here. Just watch out about UI5 experimenting with local. It's already important experimenting. The build of SAP UI5 is already cached here to obtain performance, but they are running already here. That's the goal. They should run ECI.
Like a headless browser and a maybe Docker
Exactly.
container or something like that, right?
Of
So
course.
it should run also in non-GitHub Actions environments.
We can go through the documentation, of course, just shortly. There are problems, of course, but we use Selenium and Chrome WebDriver. But if you have a problem with that, you will see our workflow implementation. We use Docker to run the UI tests, and we fire the Selenium. It's already there. We don't provide that. We fire the Selenium standalone Chrome image in Docker. That's why you have browser. Otherwise, it won't run in any Linux implementation. You need a Chrome and UI, configured UI. But it runs really good, and then you can isolate and have multiple sessions. Everything standard, like I said. But go through the documentation. If something is missing, you can find me later questions, and